On the third night after the river swallowed the bridge, Mara decided she would tell the third story. The first story had been for the officials from the city, men in pressed coats from FEMA and the county office, who stood in her doorway with clipboards and careful voices. In that story, she said the rain came too fast, the water rose too high, and the old bridge over the Grayling River simply gave way. She said she had been asleep when the sirens started. She said she had not known her father would try to cross. The second story had been for the townspeople of Belmere, gathered in the Fellowship Hall of St. Agnes Church with casseroles sweating on folding tables. In that story, she said her father had been stubborn, that he never believed the weather reports from National Weather Service, that he had always trusted his own sky. She said he was on his way to check the bait shop he'd run for 30 years. She said the river had taken him quickly. Both stories were true, as far as they went, but neither one was the third story. The third story began years earlier, on a dry afternoon when the bridge was only a rumor of rot, and the river lay low and green between its banks. Mara had been 10, barefoot and fearless, racing her older brother Caleb across the planks. Their father stood in the middle, hands on hips, laughing as the boards thudded under their feet. "Easy," he'd called. "She's older than you are." The bridge had been built in 1912, her father liked to say, by men who measured twice and cut once. He told them that wood, if respected, would outlast steel. He tapped the rail with his knuckles as if it were a living thing. Mara had believed him. By the time she was 27, she no longer believed in much. Caleb had left Belmere after high school and never looked back. Their mother had died quietly one winter morning when snow pressed against the windows. And Mara had returned from the city with a degree she didn't use and a sadness she didn't name. She took a job cataloging local history at the Belmere Public Library, a narrow brick building that smelled of paper and lemon oil. She spent her days sliding old photographs into plastic sleeves. Weddings from the 1940s, parades from the 1960s, a faded black and white of the Grayling Bridge with bunting strung from post to post. In that photograph, her father stood in the foreground, young and unlined, holding Caleb on his shoulders. Mara, a toddler, clung to their mother's skirt. She kept the photo on her desk longer than she should have. The warnings about the bridge had started 5 years before the flood. A state inspector came through, scribbled notes, frowned at the beams. The town council argued about funding. The mayor at the time, anxious, temporary, said they would apply for grants. They would look into it. They would patch what they could. Her father attended every meeting. "They want a closer," he told Mara one night, pushing peas around his plate. "Close the only crossing within 20 miles? You think that's progress?" "It's not safe," Mara said carefully. She had read the report herself. Termites, water damage, stress fractures. "Nothing's safe," he snapped, then softened. "She's held for 100 years. In the first story, Mara told the official she had tried to stop him from crossing that night. In the second story, she said she had begged him. The third story was quieter. The rain had begun on a Tuesday and did not stop. It drummed on the tin roof of the bait shop and turned the dirt roads to soup. By Thursday, the Grayling had risen to the underside of the bridge, licking at the beams like an animal testing a fence. Mara stood on the bank with her father, the hood of her jacket plastered to her hair. The river was no longer green but brown and muscled, carrying branches and a child's red ball. "They'll close it," she said. "They have to." Her father watched the water. "If they close it, I can't get to the shop." "You shouldn't be at the shop." He looked at her then, really looked. "You think I don't know that?" She hadn't expected the crack in his voice. They stood in the rain until their shoes filled and their fingers numbed. Finally, he said, "Go home, Mare." She went. The call came at 2:17 a.m. A deputy she recognized from high school. The bridge had shifted. A section had given way. A truck, her father's old Ford, had been seen near the approach. In the first story, she said she drove to the river and was held back by police tape. In the second story, she said she arrived too late to see anything. The third story admitted that she had been awake when he left. She had heard the truck engine cough to life. She had stood at her bedroom window and watched the taillights fade down the road. She had not called out. Because part of her had believed him. Because part of her thought the bridge would hold one more time. It did not. The river gave up the truck 2 days later, half a mile downstream, wedged against a sycamore. It took another day to find her father. Belmere moved through its rituals. There was a service at St. Agnes Church, the hymn her mother loved, the smell of lilies too sweet in the air. Caleb came back from Arizona, thinner and quieter than she remembered. He hugged her stiffly, as if they were distant cousins. "You should have stopped him," he said once, not unkindly. "I know," she said. But that was still not the third story. After the funeral, the town council voted unanimously to demolish what remained of the bridge. A temporary steel span would be installed within months. Progress at last. Mara found herself walking to the river each evening. Without the bridge, the brinks felt like two separate countries. The air smelled of mud and splintered wood. Yellow tape fluttered in the breeze. On the third night, she brought the old photograph from the library. She sat on a flat rock and studied her father's younger face. She tried to reconcile that man with the one who had driven into the storm. A memory rose unbidden. 2 weeks before the flood, she had stood in the bait shop doorway when her father counted the day's cash. "They're going to close it," I had said. "It's just a matter of time." He didn't look up. "Let them try." "Why are you like this?" The question came out sharper than I had intended. "Why can't you just let go?" He had set the bills down carefully. "You think this is about wood and nails?" "Isn't it?" He gestured around the shop, the walls lined with lures, the counter worn smooth by decades of elbows. "Your mother met me on that bridge, did you know that? She dropped her scarf into the river and I jumped in after it. Full thing to do. She said she'd never seen anyone so stubborn." Mara had rolled her eyes. "That's romantic, Dad, but it's not a reason to risk your life." "It's not just romance," he said quietly. "It's proof." "Proof of what?" "That something can last." She had laughed then, a short, brittle sound. "Nothing lasts." He had flinched, as if she had struck him. That was the third story. It was not about rain or wood or bureaucracy. It was about the moment she told her father that nothing lasts and saw the hope go out of his face. In the days after the funeral, she replayed that scene until it blurred. She remembered how tired he had looked, how small the shop had seemed, how she had turned away first. On the fourth evening by the river, Caleb joined her. He skipped a stone across the swollen current. "They're saying it was an act of God," he said. "God didn't skip the maintenance," Mara replied. He huffed a laugh. Then more softly, "He wouldn't have listened to me either." I glanced at him. "You tried?" "Every time I called." He shrugged. "He thought I'd abandoned him. Maybe I did." The water moved on, indifferent. "What are you going to do?" Caleb asked. "I don't know." But that wasn't true. The third story was still unfolding. A week later, she stood before the town council. The room was half full, the air stale with old coffee. The new mayor, steady, gray-haired, nodded for her to speak. "My name is Mara Ellison," she began, her voice steadier than she felt. "My father died because that bridge failed." A murmur rippled through the room. "I don't say that to assign blame to one person," she continued. "I say it because we all knew it was failing. We had reports, we had warnings, we had time." She held up the old photograph. "This bridge mattered to us. It held our memories. But we confused memory with safety. We told ourselves that because it had always been there, it would always be there." Silence. "I did that too," she said. "I believed it would hold one more time." She did not mention the window, the fading taillights. "I'm asking that when you build the new span, you don't just make it strong. Make it honest. Put up a plaque that tells the whole story. Not just the year it was built, but the year it fell. Not just the names of the men who constructed it, but the names of the people we lost because we waited." The mayor cleared his throat. "We can consider." "Consider quickly," she said, surprising herself with the heat in her voice. "Because the river won't wait next time." Afterwards, several townspeople approached her. Some squeezed her hand. Others avoided their eyes. Change was uncomfortable, grief even more so. The demolition began in early spring. Mara watched from the bank as cranes lifted the remaining beams, as chunks of history were lowered onto flatbed trucks. The sound of splintering wood echoed across the water. She cried then, not the sharp, choking sobs of the funeral, but a slow, steady weeping that felt like release. Caleb left again, but this time they had longer. "Call me," he said. "I will." The new bridge rose over the summer, steel and concrete, unromantic and unapologetic. It did not creak in the wind. It did not sway under flight. It gleamed. On the day it opened, the town gathered with paper flags and a brass band. The mayor gave a speech about resilience. A ribbon was cut. Applause scattered into the bright air. Mara waited until the crowd thinned. Then she walked to the center of the span. Halfway across, she stopped. A small bronze plaque had been bolted to the railing. She traced the engraved letters with her fingertips. The Grayling Bridge stood from 1912 to 2025, replaced in the wake of the Great Flood, in memory of Thomas Ellison and all those we have lost to the river. May we honor the past by building wisely for the future. She had argued for those last words. The river below was calmer now, reflecting the sky like polished stone. It looked harmless, almost gentle. She understood finally that her father had not been trying to defy the future. He was trying to hold on to proof that love and labor meant something, that they left marks on the world that did not wash away at the first hard rain. He had been wrong about the bridge, but he had not been wrong about that. The third story was not one she would tell the officials or the town. It was the one she carried alone, that love can make us foolish, that grief can make us brave, and that sometimes the only way to honor what has fallen is to build something stronger in its place. On the anniversary of the flood, she returned to the river at dusk. She brought with her a small wooden plank salvaged from the old bridge,
Smoothed and sealed, its splinters sanded down. She did not throw it into the water. Instead, she carried it home and mounted it above her desk at the library. Beneath it, she placed the old photograph. Visitors sometimes ask about the plank. She would smile and tell them about the bridge that once connected two banks of a southern river. She would tell them about a town that learned too late, and then finally learned in time. She did not tell them about the window, or the taillights, or the brittle laugh in the bait shop. That was the third story. And it was enough.